Hi everybody, I'm Matt. I'm from the Specialist Works. My surname isn't Power, it's Pover, but it would have been really cool to be called Matt Power, I'm sure. So who are we? We help ambitious gaming brands to grow around the US, Europe, and beyond. We work with probably more gaming brands than any other full-service media agency out there. And we have a borderless approach, so whatever media you need, whatever strategy you need, wherever you need it, we're there for you guys. We do all the stuff on that kind of flower diagram over there, so it includes offline and online. We do creative as well, but a lot of the gaming brands, as Mike just referred to, have their own digital in-house teams, and so we very much dovetail with their offerings so that we give them what they need and we don't try and teach them to suck eggs. So it's very important that we collaborate and integrate with the in-house teams and also the business insight teams, and all the tools are compatible as well. We've done campaigns across 27 markets in the last 12 months, and we are currently, at the last count, 210 people in various places around the world as well. And I'm going to talk to you about two main things today, primarily TV, but there's obviously other offline channels that can help supercharge your mobile UA, and also how not to attribute TV, because I think some people out there have got their own ideas, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that in a bit more detail. So here we are at Pocket Gamer. We teamed up with Pocket Gamer and did a research study and asked loads of games developers and publishers whether they use TV and what their opinions were about TV and so on. And actually only 4% of games brands use TV regularly to promote their games. 12% use it occasionally, 13% might think about it at some point potentially. So that left kind of 71% of games brands who actually have kind of discounted TV, wouldn't really consider it. But actually when we asked them if they would consider TV, if we could prove to them that you could track it, analyze it, and optimize it, then almost half of them said, sure, yeah, let's have a look at that. So that's exactly what I'm going to try and do with you guys today, talk about that in a little bit more detail. A lot of you will have, Tune, Adjust, and so on, and those platforms have their own kind of TV modules within them, and they're also compatible with platforms like TV Squared and Adalizer and so on. But actually, the way that all of those systems at the moment is attributing TV broadly kind of looks like this. So, excuse me, your organic installs are bumbling along, a TV spot drops, and then this is the principle. There's a huge uplift in installs above the baseline, and within an attribution window, the installs that are basically driven in that period get allocated to the TV spot, or the closest TV spot. And actually, that model, that kind of shape of response really only really applies to web response rather than App Store response, because the distance between seeing a TV spot and then jumping on your phone and checking something out online, you get an immediate timestamp. And that immediacy of TV to online in terms of e-commerce and digital brands like that, where you're just searching up a website, it does look like that. So you do get an immediate surge in response. But actually, when you're driving action into an app store, it's different. They've got to search for you, they've got to find you, they've got to start the install, and then they've got to open the app, open the game before the timestamp gets fired off into the system. So that, depending on where you are, what the circumstances are, how into the show you are, will mean that there isn't a nice, smooth, predictable, and machine learnable shape to the response like there is with Drive to Web. So you need to measure it differently, and that's not kind of how people are doing it at the moment. One of the ways that we also know about this is when we work with Elex Tech on promoting Clash of Kings in the UK, we put a great big marquee spot in the 2 a.m. showing of the launch night of Game of Thrones. It was 2 a.m. in the UK, it was simulcast in the US. And that one spot cost £100,000 at 2 a.m. because so many people tuned in to watch that season premiere. The same program was shown actually at 9 p.m. the next evening in the UK, which is much more civilized for most people to watch, but so few people watch that spot only costs 50k. So that gives you an idea of how into the show people were. And because people were so into the show, in the ad breaks, they were kind of commenting and talking about it with their friends on social media rather than responding to the ad. So they absorbed the message of the ad, and actually what we saw is 40 minutes later, then we saw a great big surge in performance. Then we saw the response come through, and that's where everyone started installing and playing the game, actually. So it's really important to take these kind of behaviors into account. And I know you guys in Helsinki love herring, but the data that you're seeing is a red herring, because you can't optimize your TV campaigns using this data. You can't optimize the day of week, day part, channel, program, and creative variant using this system. So we see TV very much as being integrated with your digital activity, and so integrated campaigns require integrated measurement in order to really fully appreciate the effects. And that's where the system that we've developed in-house that isn't available apart from via us, which is quite convenient for us, called KODUSIM comes in, and what that does is it analyzes and visualizes all this stuff. So it looks at the total effects beyond the attribution window. It looks at the campaign afterglow, because if you've done a really good campaign, your baseline is going to be changed for quite some time after the campaign finishes. So you're going to have a new normal after the campaign, and that can get attributed back. And then you look at, the system can then look at the supercharging effect on mobile UA of the TV and the other offline activity, and depending on the size of that campaign, that will drive a different ratio between paid and organic installs. And then anything else that you're tracking in your mobile analytics platform, you know, DAUs, reactivations, and so on, we can track that and then attribute that back appropriately to the media that drove it. So anyone wants any more detail about this, we've got a guy, everyone's got a guy, haven't they? A NASA guy or a CERN Hadron Collider guy. We've got a CERN Hadron Collider guy who was involved in the Higgs boson and all that, to your physics chat, mate. You get on well with that guy. So what's so good about TV? Why am I stood here talking about it to you guys? Well, first of all, I think it's slightly dangerous because we all spend a lot of time on our phones, and it's dangerous to think that because we as a community behave in a certain way, that everybody out there does the same thing. We need to basically look at the trends and the consumer behavior in the different markets. So actually, people still love TV. People still love getting together and watching TV as it's broadcast. Yes, you can do on demand. Yes, you can binge Netflix or whatever you want to do. But actually, we're basically just consuming more audiovisual content via different means every day. So, you know, there's a stat there about Europeans and Americans on average from Deloitte. In the UK, we know that on average, people watch 3 hours and 20 minutes every day. I mean, I don't know who those guys are. They've got that much time to spend watching TV, but that's the average across all age groups. Of course, a lot of the gaming audiences, depending on the type of game, will be a bit younger, and therefore they watch a little bit less linear TV. But linear TV does drive a supercharging effect, and it just means that you need to be careful about your planning and your buying, so you're not wasting by broadcasting in shows that loads of people who aren't your target consumer are watching. So I talked about supercharging your digital UA, but don't just take my word for it. Facebook have been promoting this fact for quite some time. Done lots of studies, incentives, measurement, and so on. And then Nielsen last year did a study that showed the effects of the individual channels, of just using Facebook, just using TV, on ad recall and purchase intent. And you can see Facebook on its own is 3% ad recall and 1% purchase intent, and TV 6 and 8. But combining those two, and it really drives ad recall, it really drives memorability and cut through, and significantly it drives that intent to purchase. So people are more likely to act as a result of it. And the other great thing about TV that potentially escapes digital is that increasingly digital isn't as trusted as other channels. So traditional media like TV, newspapers, and so on, you can see from the trust barometer there, over time, traditional media is just growing in terms of the trust, and that's at the expense of some of the other digital channels. And in particular, trustworthiness of different individual medium TV and broadcast video there at 61% versus social media down at 38%. So that's why combining those two effectively with cohesive campaigns across the different platforms drives stronger response. And then, again, critically, the likelihood to purchase by medium, TV is a massive stimulus for that and can help you reach audiences that you wouldn't ordinarily reach via the digital channels where you're harvesting inbound interest effectively. So a little bit about TV and how best to approach it for you. Some helpful hints, if you will. One of the most powerful ways of optimizing TV is to align it closely with consumer demand and their consumption habits. So we call it flighting, but basically having the right amount of TV on at the right times and the right days of week, day parts and so on, is really powerful. And you also need to be able to find your audience and find which shows that they're watching and that they love. And you need special tools in order to profile all the different channels and different day parts and so on to make sure that you can find them and then target them effectively. And in terms of targeting, we find there's so much difference in terms of the performance that gets driven by different programs. So it's not just at a TV station or channel level. You need to go right down into the granular detail, particularly on the bigger channels, because you can burn through a lot of cash. I said 100K for that launch spot in Game of Thrones there. And then finally, back to my initial point about attribution, it's important that you attribute appropriately depending on the shape of the campaign. If you've got a more performance-shaped TV campaign, it'll have a much less pronounced effect on your mobile UA. But chunkier, bigger brand, more ambitious and talked about TV campaigns drive a much bigger effect over other channels. So it's important to be able to analyze that as the campaign's going, because TV, like digital, can be optimized while the campaign is running. A lot of people think you've got to just set and forget a TV campaign, and certain agencies tell you that's what you've got to do because it's easier. But actually, if you're across the data, or your agency's across the data, and they're changing stuff as they're seeing it, and they're synchronizing your digital stuff to the TV activity, more importantly as well, then that drives the strongest overall impact. And a little bit of technical stuff about strategy now and planning, just to sort of get under the skin of the TV stuff. In different markets, we use the performance perspective. It's a kind of a flexible planning approach. And what effectively it does is it takes all the TV channels in any particular market and it divides them into 3 distinct channel groupings based on the percentage share of viewing, which is this yellow column, to the audience that we're looking for. And here we've just used all adults just to give you a flavor of the overall dynamics of the UK market as an example. So efficient star channels are channels that deliver less than 1% share of viewing to the audience that we're looking for. So you put a different audience in there and these channels will jump around within this framework. There are 182 of these channels in the UK. And when you add them all up, that's 21% of the total viewing in the UK. So you kind of quickly fill these up if you want to have a decent sized campaign. But these are really efficient because people aren't that into the content. They'll kind of watch different, they'll kind of have it on as kind of wallpaper TV, and they'll be happy to go off and search you up and install the game while they're watching the show. So they're very good at reminders or activating action. And then further up this pyramid, we've got the volume drivers, and these 1 to 5% share 19 of these channels in the UK, and that's 32% of the market. And these are a bit bigger, and you get different kinds of shows at different times of day, and different kinds of people tuning in to watch these different shows. So from this point and up, it's really important to really focus down on program level to get maximum value from everything. And then at the top of the pyramid are the awareness builders, and these guys drive very strong volume, really get your game talked about, really drive strong brand search effects, and also drive chart position if you plan the campaign in a really tight, compressed period. And as the name suggests, they do build brand, and brand effects have a longer term impact. So if your game, if you're releasing new things, and we work with Rocket League, for example, they'll be promoting rocket passes, and they're obviously available for a limited period. So if you're going to keep coming with different partnerships and different offers, and you want to get them out to your players, and also use them as an acquisition vehicle, then these channels are massively important. And so using these three groups, you can kind of describe the shape of campaigns and how they respond to different briefs. If we're looking for absolute efficiency, we're not trying to drive a great big mobile UA halo effect. You just want to dip your toe in and spend, a little bit of money just to see if there's an effect from TV. Then you probably have a shape that's kind of a bit like this, where you have a lot of efficient stars, some volume drivers, and a very select number of awareness builder channels. On the other side, you've got kind of a more brand building, more confident, more ambitious campaign where you've got to land with stature in a territory and really drive volume. And you've kind of really got, you're geared up, a bit like the Netmarble stuff that the chap just talked about, where you've got a celebrity, you've bought all the licenses out for global online exposure, and you really want to land with stature. And that would involve much more in the awareness builder category. And there's obviously shades of grey all the way through here, but so TV and the strategies that you employ can be really flexible to fulfill whatever the outcome that you're trying to drive. And we also make ads as well, so I'll just play you an example of some of this stuff.
When it comes to TV, at The Specialist Works, it's on like Donkey Kong. Working with 30 games companies, broadcasting in 27 countries. We know what's important, getting more players and keeping them playing for weeks, months, years. And if you want creative solutions, from busting blocks to blockbusters, check out The Specialist Works. The Specialist Works, where it's game on.
Thanks, guys.
Fantastic. Matt, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Actually, don't leave yet, because I have a question for you.
Okay.
How much money does it take to actually make a statistically significant difference in my business? I don't have hundreds of thousands of pounds to spend on an ad for my rather pathetic little game. What's the minimum I can invest?
Yeah. Well, it depends on the market. So if you're market agnostic and you can choose any market, you'd pick a small market so that the spend would have a larger effect. But if you're testing in a small market, you could spend as little as 20K and see a measurable difference on your business, and then use that as a platform then to build out and scale beyond that.
All right, so if I've got 2K, well, I'm at the wrong order of magnitude.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Move the decimal point a little bit.
Okay, so 20 and up, and you can do some really good work for me.
Yeah, you can start to. Yeah.
Matt, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Cheers.
Any other